I found a new girlfriend, and we're planning to move in together. So I'm divorcing you, and you're going to go to your parents. I don't understand what you are saying. I don't need you anymore. I can leave you with my parents if you want to be a breadwinner or a housekeeper. Zara, you understand. My parents-in-law and my husband laugh at me. They are the worst kind of people, but for me, it's better that way. Then you all need to leave. My name is Zara, and I am a 32-year-old office worker. I have lived my whole life working. After graduating from college, I started working for a major company. For about 10 years, I worked hard and obtained qualifications for promotions. Thanks to that, I am now department manager at such a young age. I am blessed with a boss who always has something useful to say to me. In a group of highly motivated and talented subordinates, I was very fulfilled in my work, but my personal life was not at all fulfilling. I had a boyfriend once when I was a student, but none since I started working. Worried about my situation, a friend of mine hosted a dinner party for me. That is where I met Archie. He was kind, had a nice smile, and gave me the impression that he was very personable. Since he was the same age as me, we had a lot in common, and it was fun talking to him. We soon became friends, exchanged contact information, and started going out to eat alone together. Then he confessed his feelings for me, and we started going out together. We got along well, and he proposed to me, and we ended up getting married. I was so happy to be married to the man I love so much, and soon after, I went to his parents' house to greet them. His parents were very kind and welcomed me with open arms. Zara, it's nice to meet you. I can't believe such a beautiful person came to be Archie's bride, cried. I am so proud of my son for bringing a good woman here. Hey Mom and Dad, stop it. Zara is getting scared, said Archie. Oh my, if you really think so, you can say it. That's right, it's a compliment, so it's okay. His parents were very friendly and easy to talk to, just like him. Zara works for a major company, doesn't she? Oh no, that's great. It's cool to be a woman who can work hard. Will you quit your job when you get married? No, I'm going to keep working. Well, you've got a good job at a good company, that's better, I was relieved. According to my friends around me, I had heard that their mother-in-law told them to quit the job. They say that they are often told that it is a wife's job to support her husband. So I was glad. My heart was filled with excitement. I thought to myself that my would-be mother-in-law was generous. After greeting my parents, we were married. My heart was filled with excitement for the new married life that was about to begin. My husband moved into the house I was living in, and we started our new married life together. I'm very happy to be newlyweds with my husband, whom I love very much. I'm happy to be able to be at home with him all the time, and I'm also happy to have him home when I come home from work. 6 months into our life together, my husband said he had something he wanted to discuss with me. If you don't mind, I'd like you to live with my father and mother. What do you mean, live together? Yes, they are getting old, and I am worried about many things. I see, I can certainly understand how my husband feels. My parents are about the same age as my husband's parents, but my brother and his wife are currently living with them, so I have nothing to worry about. However, my husband is an only child, so it is understandable that he is concerned about his parents. Does this mean we are living with my in-laws? Yes, it would, but do they have a room available for us? They use every room for some reason or another. About that, if you like, I think it would be a good idea to renovate my parents' house and make it a 2-family house. 2 families. Yes, if we do that, it will be much cheaper than buying a new house. We can live in a beautiful and spacious house while still maintaining our privacy, right? I see, I thought it was indeed an attractive proposal. My in-laws are very kind people, and we won't be together all the time if we live in 2 houses. It would be less stressful. Yes, that's fine, really, thank you. My mom and dad will be so happy. I was happy to see my husband so happy. Later, my in-laws came to visit us, and both of them were very grateful. I even thought that with such a kind and cheerful family, I wouldn't mind not having two households. Soon after that, my husband and I discussed remodeling my in-laws' house. The cost would be around $100,000, but as we were discussing it, my husband made a surprising remark. Actually, I have a favor to ask you. Can you pay for the remodeling? What do you mean, the full amount? Why? Then my husband looked very uncomfortable. Actually, we are in debt. I was surprised. Neither my husband nor my parents-in-law had ever said anything like that when we were dating or when we got married. I was surprised. How much debt do they have? About $150,000. What? I thought it would be a few tens of thousands of dollars, but I was surprised at the amount of money, and I ended up shouting out loud. It wasn't so bad at first, but it gradually grew, and even if I tried to pay it back, I couldn't. My parents are already living on a pension. I can't pay them back as much as I'd like, and the debt is getting bigger and bigger. I see, I could not hide my surprise and upset at the sudden and shocking revelation. I had no idea that my parents-in-law owed me such a large sum of money. Zara, I need a favor. Will you help me pay off my father and father-in-law's debt? They can't afford it anymore, and I don't make a very good salary either. Then isn't it going to be tough to renovate the house and live together as two families? No, that's important, so let's go ahead as planned. You have asked me to pay for the remodeling and your father's debt. I'm on the hook for $250,000. I know I'm talking about difficult things, but I want to take care of my life with Zara, and I want to protect my mom and dad. It's because I love both my parents and Zara. I'm sorry I'm being greedy, but if you really love me, please help me. I'll pay you back little by little. I was very distressed. My husband and my in-laws have no one to turn to but me, and I knew that my husband really loved me. But at that time, I was completely deceived by my husband's words. Love is blind, I think, and that is exactly what it is. Okay, I'll pay for it, I agreed to do so. Then my husband said, "Thank you so much," and he shook my hand and thanked me very much. He told my parents-in-law, and later they came to our house and apologized to me. My mother-in-law even shed tears of joy. I have to do my best from now on. I had to take over my in-laws' debt, and I was determined to do it. However, although I had some savings, I was afraid to pay it all at once. So for now, I decided to pay about $330,000 from my savings and then pay the rest in installments. Then my in-laws joined us, and we talked about repayment. I explained to my in-laws about the installments I had just made. They said that I could do whatever I wanted. Then why don't you transfer the money directly to the account for debt repayment? We're not very good at managing money, and I'm a little afraid to transfer a lot of money. When my husband said this, my parents-in-law nodded. Indeed, it would be time-consuming for me to transfer the money to my parents-in-law's account and then for them to transfer it to their repayment account. And since it was a large sum, I would not like it if the money was not transferred in the middle of the process. So I agreed to that. Once the conversation was settled, my parents-in-law looked very relieved. Now we don't have to be afraid of the monthly debt collection. That has been really scary. Dad and Mom, you should thank Zara properly. Well, I can't tell you how many times I thanked you. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. I'm so glad Zara came to be his wife. No, I was happy that my in-laws were happy. However, I felt a little uncomfortable because I thought that they might think of me as a money spinner when they said those last words. I felt a little bad, but I wanted to take care of my beloved husband's family. With that in mind, I began to make payments, and at the same time, we remodeled our house and completed our two-family home. We started living together in a beautiful and spacious house. My parents-in-law were very happy. We started living together, and my husband's eyes lit up at the new house. I was really cautious and seduced her. "You should be more grateful," my husband said. "Oh my, you're one of the people who created that debt," replied my parents-in-law. "What? But I'm the one with the least." "What are you talking about? How much did you spend on horse racing? Your gambling is terrible." "I get a jackpot once in a while, so there were times when we were in the black." "How can you be in the black when you owe $150,000? But at this rate, we'll be able to get out of debt and get back on track." "That's really great. And she even remodeled our house. I got a really good wife." "Well, I'm going to throw her away after she pays off the debt," my husband and parents-in-law laughed. I was so stunned that I couldn't move from the front door for a while. After calming down a little, I made a loud noise as I closed the lock and said, "I'm home," from the front door. When I went to the living room, my parents and in-law and husband greeted me with smiles. "Oh Noel, welcome home, good job, good job. Well then, we're going back to our room. Let's have dinner together again." I was so afraid of this gentle smile of my parents-in-law because I had heard their earlier conversation. Likewise, this man who is pretending to be a good husband with a smile on his face shocked me. I wondered what I had been doing to try to pay them back. "Didn't you say you had to work late today?" my husband asked. "Yeah, I've been working a lot more than I expected, so I decided to hurry up and cook dinner and came home on time," I replied. Then, when my husband didn't know, I tried my best to act calm until dinner so that my husband would not realize what I had done. Then, when my husband was taking a bath, I stayed in my room and cried alone. But crying as hard as I could made me want to give my husband and in-laws a break. I cried as hard as I could. From then on, I acted quickly. I began to prepare for the divorce and then steadily made plans for what to do after the divorce. About 3 months passed. I pretended to be happy and told my husband that I had paid off my parents-in-law's debt. My husband rolled his eyes. "What? You paid off the debt, that $150,000. That was supposed to take roughly 3 years, right? Actually, I have quite a bit of money saved up, but I was afraid to pay it off all at once. So, I started taking out a little bit from my salary and savings. But we were already below $100,000, and I thought it would be better to pay it all off at once." "I see," my husband replied. Then, I asked, "Do you mind if I check?" and asked to see my bank book. I showed my husband the bank book. Oh, it's true. $90,000 was paid all at once. My husband tried to contain his excitement as much as possible, but I could see that he was itching to get out of there. "Wow, Sarah, thank you. My dads are going to love this," my husband exclaimed, putting his hands on his face, pretending to cry. Soon after, my parents-in-law also came and thanked me. "Thank you so much. I'm so glad I met Zara. You're like God." If I hadn't known any of this, I would have surely been happy to be along for the ride, having been deceived. But I already know what these people are really like, and I only acted because I was ready for my plan. A few days later, my husband asked to speak with me. He looked very serious. "What on earth?" I exclaimed. "I'm sorry, but you have to leave me." "What? What do you mean?" I acted surprised on purpose. "I have a new girlfriend. I'm going to live here with her. So, I'm divorcing you, and you're going to my parents' place." I was really taken aback by Archie's unexpected statement. I knew from eavesdropping on our earlier conversation that my husband would leave me when he finished paying his debts. However, I did not expect him to openly declare his infidelity. What did he mean by having me go to his in-laws after he left me? I asked. I don't really understand what you mean. My husband's mood turned sour. You're not very understanding at all. I don't need you anymore, but as a breadwinner or a housekeeper, I can keep you here. Then the front door opened, and my in-laws came in. Archie, did you finally tell her? They asked. Yeah, I told her. I wish I could have been there for that moment, my husband replied. Oh, that's how it is. You can come to her house if you do the chores for us. Of course, we'll charge you rent, though, my parents-in-law said, laughing. They are the worst people ever, but that's more than I can say for me. Then all of you need to leave, I said. My in-laws rolled their eyes at my comment. What are you talking about? Have you forgotten I can easily pay for the renovation myself? You changed the name of the house to mine. That's why I have the rights to this house. I can decide who to let live in the house and who to kick out, I said. The faces of my in-laws turned blue at my comment. Then, they finally remembered about the title of the house. I was really dumbfounded. I'm sorry, but you can't live here anymore. If we get divorced, you'll be strangers. My in-laws realized the gravity of the situation. But my husband, not wanting to be outdone by me, retorted, but you took over our debt and paid it in full. You're the one who's losing money if we had no debt. We could at least afford a new place to live. That's true. Thank you for letting us live in a nice house while you pay our debts, my in-laws and husband said. So, I told them the fact. I'm sorry, but I didn't pay off the rest of the $90,000 debt. What? No. But you had money missing from your bank book. That was just a separate account that I created and moved around. So, the debt hasn't changed for $90,000. I just haven't had the collections come yet because I've been paying large sums of money continuously. But I think it's time for them to come. So, you are responsible for paying the rest. My husband and in-laws went pale. Then I shot them a warning. Archie, you told me you were having an affair, so you should pay the alimony. I'll charge your partner for the affair too. Oh no. She went out with me even though she's beautiful because I own a house and have money. If they charge me alimony, she'll dump me. I don't care about that. No, I apologize. Please don't leave us. My husband is afraid of being dumped by the adulterer, and my in-laws are afraid of being dumped by me. They are truly selfish and scum parents and children in every way. I have nothing to do with you people anymore, no matter what you say. I have also put this house on the market. I will also have you pay your debt of $60,000 that I paid on your behalf through my lawyer. Oh no. The in-laws froze, stunned by the loss of everything they had. I then demanded a divorce in alimony from my husband through my lawyer. I also demanded alimony from the adulterer. I demanded $60,000 from my in-laws for what I had paid them. Actually, that renovated in-law house sold for about $200,000. It was in a good location, and there was a family that was just looking for a duplex, so we got a good price. They were able to buy it, so I had to pay $160,000, which included the $60,000 I owed on the debt and $100,000 for the renovation. I have paid $160,000 but gained $40,000 as a result. In addition, I also get alimony from my ex-husband and the affair partner, which is a very positive situation. On top of that, I was able to get a small payment of $60,000 from my ex-parents-in-law. I am the one who is getting the most out of this situation. I think this is a reasonable request because the damage I have suffered was so bad that I distrusted people. As for me having that much savings to begin with, I was trying to learn how to invest so that I could pay off my in-laws' debts as quickly as possible. And since I had quite a lot of savings to begin with, I put a few tens of thousands of dollars or so into investments. I found that my assets had grown quite a bit in about a year. Plus, I had gotten a raise, so I was getting paid quite well. So, I was able to take such a drastic step because I had saved a lot of money. I was the biggest beneficiary, and my former in-laws were back in debt and lost their house. To be honest, I think they deserved it because they cheated me. Fraudulent people like that should go to hell. For once, I should reflect on what happened to me this time and develop a better eye for people. From now on, I will also continue to save and increase my assets so that I can live a luxurious life in my old age, and I want to make many happy memories with people.
My wife, Alana, and I were dining at a fancy restaurant when I spotted my oldest and closest friend approaching our table. I discreetly informed my wife about it, mentioning that Terrence Landis was coming over. I reminded her that he had been my best friend since second grade, but advised her to be cautious around him, given his reputation as a ladies' man. Thankfully, Alana replied softly, assuring me that she would be fine. I then asked her about Terrence, noting that he was the wealthy friend I had mentioned before. I nodded in her direction and rose to greet Terrence, who embraced me tightly, though the gesture felt a bit awkward in such a public place. Terrence expressed his joy at seeing me again, mentioning that it had been a while since we hung out. He seemed to have a particular interest in Alana, and inquired if she was my lovely wife. He also mentioned that he had sent a gift when we got married in Singapore, hoping we enjoyed it. Alana, quite excited, brought up the pickup truck he had gifted me and offered a hug. I introduced her to Terrence, explaining their connection. Terrence then politely but firmly pulled me aside to embrace Alana. In her usual outgoing manner, Alana commented on his tall and handsome appearance and hugged him for a bit longer than I thought was suitable for a married woman. Curious about Terrence's presence in Daytona, I asked why he was there. Terrence explained that he had purchased a condo in the dunes and was currently renovating it. He mentioned that he was staying at a local hotel and had come to the restaurant for dinner alone. Alana, always inquisitive, remarked on his condo purchase, expressing her surprise that he was renovating it since the condos were practically new. She couldn't fathom what needed changing. Terrence agreed with her, explaining that the bedrooms felt cramped to him and he had taken the opportunity to buy a free penthouse. He planned to paint it and get new furniture. It was evident that Terrence was making an effort to impress Alana, who was particularly materialistic. Despite my decent income and savings, she seemed determined to spend us into financial trouble. We were celebrating our 3rd anniversary, but her attention was primarily on Terrence, which didn't escape the notice of onlookers who looked at me sympathetically. I suggested that we focus on each other again as the waiter brought our food. Alana didn't argue, but intensified her focus on our steaks. Alana insisted that Terrence should join us, as my best friend was also her friend. Terrence hesitated, mentioning that he didn't want to intrude on our romantic dinner. However, Alana quickly intervened, instructing the waiter to set the table for Terrence, who was joining us for dinner. The waiter swiftly attended to it, and in no time, Terrence was seated at our table, dominating the conversation. I managed to win a game of solitaire on my phone, while he and Alana chatted about various topics. I didn't pay much attention to their conversation until Alana addressed me. She suggested that we had 2 spare rooms and that we should invite Terrence to stay with us, allowing us to catch up. Although she mentioned he could try her home-cooked meals, I suspected she'd order expensive takeout from fancy restaurants instead. I was taken aback by her suggestion and had my doubts about whether Terrence would appreciate her cooking. My first wife, Helen, passed away after 22 years of marriage. She and Terrence were close friends, and I never worried about their friendship because Helen was devoted and trustworthy. Sadly, she passed away suddenly from a heart attack 5 years ago. I mourned for over a year before meeting Alana at a charity event. Despite the 11-year age difference, we eventually got married, and we've been together for 3 years now. Alana had been divorced before, claiming her first husband cheated on her. I was committed to never cheating on my wife, and Alana knew it. It seemed that Alana had no trouble convincing Terrence to stay with us, and I suspected her revealing attire played a part in it. Terrence didn't have to wake up early for work, which was a luxury reserved for those without millions in the bank. Alana hadn't worked since her first divorce, and she had me sign a prenuptial agreement stating I wouldn't touch her money, no matter how long we were married. This suited me fine, as I had a stable income from my investments and a good job. When I arrived home on Monday night, Alana and Terrence appeared even closer than they were at the restaurant the night before. Dinner was prepared and exceptionally tasty, but I noticed the trash can filled with containers from a local restaurant. Terrence and Alana were so engrossed in their own world that they didn't even notice when I left the living room, climbed the stairs, and went to bed. Their lack of attention didn't make me feel awkward. I was quite surprised when I got home on Wednesday evening and found Alana seemingly waiting for me. She was sitting on an expensive sofa, which, in my opinion, was a bit too close, especially for a friend. The man she had recently met was Terrence. Alana's opening statement was that we needed to have a conversation. Once again, I was taken aback. It was just a regular Wednesday, and I couldn't help but wonder how Terrence had worked his magic so swiftly. I knew he was skilled at everything he pursued, but this was incredibly impressive, and I knew it would cost me. Alana explained that Terrence and I had discovered a strong connection, one we hadn't intended for, but couldn't deny. She informed me that she was going to divorce me as soon as it was possible, and that she planned to marry Terrence. She requested that I not try to dissuade her, emphasizing that she wouldn't give up her home and half her savings just because I couldn't stay faithful, and Terrence couldn't keep his actions in check. I responded with determination that surprised even myself, stating that I would fight her every step of the way. Alana, in response, expressed disdain and labeled my reaction as typical of someone who's insecure. She clarified that she didn't marry me for my money and didn't want it when we divorced. Both Terrence and Alana believed that the divorce process would be smoother if she left with the money she brought into the marriage. She demanded to know if this was enough incentive for a quick divorce. In a sly manner, I replied, asking her where she wanted me to sign, knowing that money meant more to her than to me. Alana insisted that she would spend the next few nights with Terrence while they waited for his apartment to be painted, and she made it clear that she didn't want to hear any complaints, whining, crying, or grumbling. I simply nodded and turned, heading to the nearest bar. It's incredible how quickly a divorce can proceed through the legal process when all three parties involved are motivated, especially when one of them is quite wealthy. A few months later, I was a single man once more. The weekend after the divorce was finalized, I returned to the same restaurant where I had first met Alana and found Terrence sitting at a two-person table. I walked over and joined him. Terrence wondered whether he should publicly praise me or wait for a more private setting. I expressed my lack of composure, suggesting that I didn't understand how he could be so cheerful. I mentioned that he shouldn't have proposed to Alana, as she could potentially come after him for various reasons like infidelity, breach of contract, outright deception, or just being rude. Terrence, in his usual calm manner, assured me that such things wouldn't happen. He suggested that I wasn't seeing the big picture and encouraged me to enlighten him. He also mentioned that he knew Alana and described her as stubborn, vengeful, and quite cunning. I asked Terrence with a chuckle whether he had felt differently when he proposed to her. I asked him to consider what the final straw was that made him decide to get rid of her. I admitted that I wasn't entirely sure, but I mentioned that it might have had something to do with the fact that her personal trainer was seeing her 3 times a week, and for some reason, it bothered me. I explained that the thought of filing for divorce, even for infidelity, was unappealing because she would have received half of everything plus alimony. I added that this was why I had turned to him for help, expressing my surprise at his ability to persuade her to ask for a divorce by Wednesday. I commented that it was incredible and noted that his persuasive skills must have improved over the years. Terrence confessed that it had more to do with how his portfolio had grown over the years. He explained that once she realized how much money he had, she was able to seduce him instantly. He admitted that he would miss her in bed and mentioned that making love to my wife had been one of the highlights of his life. I said seriously that her unique talent drew me into this whole scheme. I acknowledged that Terrence did an excellent job freeing me from that money-hungry woman, but I wondered why he didn't care about how she'd react to being left without ever getting married. I suggested she might figure out the entire plan, given her conniving nature and cleverness. Terrence explained that he had the big picture in mind when he gave Alana a weekend at the Ritz, complete with a spa day as an engagement gift. I retorted, calling him a fool and reminding him that Alana's personal trainer was now a masseuse at the Ritz, raising the possibility that she might have run into him. Terrence admitted that he had booked the spa for her and shared that he had visited her the previous night to see how delighted she was with his gift. He mentioned that he had a key to the room and that his phone was set up for video. I processed the situation and inquired if she had been with her former personal trainer, asking if there was a video and if she had cheated on him. I wondered if Terrence had been upset enough to call off the engagement. Terrence replied with a grin, stating that Alana was devastated by his unyielding stance, and it was the first time she'd ever done something like that. He assured me that it wouldn't happen again. I mentioned that I was on the same page as her in not being affected by the situation. Currently, Alana was out shopping, giving back the gifts I had given her, and there were tears and angry words involved. Terrence added with a big grin that I owed him dinner for convincing her to say she wanted a divorce on Wednesday. I acknowledged his efforts, saying he had saved me a lot of money, and that I'd love to treat him to dinner because he had always had my back, unlike Alana, who didn't understand what real friendship meant. Story 2. I'm Frank Grimes, and my wife is Peggy. We've been married for 2 decades and have 2 children, Mike and Emma. I'm returning home after dropping off Emma at university, and I'm looking forward to discussing my wife's affairs over the past 12 years. Her latest affair is the most serious, and now that our kids are gone, she wants to leave me for her lover. As I turn onto our street, I spot our house with the lights on, indicating she's home. I pull into the driveway, get out of the car, open the front door, and walk in. My wife sits on the couch, looking somewhat anxious, though I've never even raised my voice at her, let alone my hand. She glances at me and then at the 2 suitcases near the door. I focus on them too. Peggy, my wife, has left to take Emma to her first year at university. I'm sitting on the couch, waiting for my lover to pick me up. My suitcases are packed, and I've left Frank a note explaining my departure for another man. But my lover is running late, and I'm anxious about what might happen if Frank returns home first. My current lover is just the latest in a series of lovers I've had over the past 12 years. But this one is special, and we're deeply in love. I reflect on my past affairs during this time. My first lover was my tennis coach at the country club. He was attentive and caring, but he left without a word. Next was a work colleague, and our affair started on a business trip to New York, fueled by too much drink. It continued for over 2 years, mostly during company trips and late nights in his office. Then he vanished, rumored to have run off with a younger woman. After that, an old college friend and I rekindled our affair at a charity sale, which lasted 6 months. The most recent affair is with Tom, my best friend's husband. It began with innocent flirting at a barbecue and evolved into a passionate love affair. Now I'm waiting for him to pick me up, but he's running late and I'm growing anxious. Peggy, were you planning to leave with Tom, or did you intend to tell me about him? I point to a note on the table with my wedding rings placed on it. Frank picks up the note, drops my rings on the floor, and reads it. Dear Frank, as you can see, I left you for another man. It doesn't matter who. I love him and he loves me. We are going far away. Please don't try to find me. We had a good marriage and good times, but we've grown apart in recent years. It's time to say goodbye. Frank reads the note, smiles, and puts it in his briefcase. Then he turns to me and thanks me for the note, saying it will make things easier. He mentions a video of me with Tom in our bed, and I'm bewildered. Frank reveals that he's known about my affairs from the start and had me under surveillance. He shares that he got rid of my lovers to maintain a stable family for our children and avoid financial consequences in a divorce. Frank, let me share a little story with you. Back in elementary school, my closest friend was a boy named George Vanoni. He was a small kid who often got picked on, but I'd always step in to protect him, even if it meant taking a beating myself. Eventually, the school realized that messing with him meant dealing with me, and they didn't like the consequences. Our friendship continued through college and remains intact today. George's mother, whose maiden name was Gambini, belonged to the same Gambini family associated with the East Side. She had a desire to distance herself from the family's illegal activities, so they sent him to a regular high school and college. He pursued business and law as his majors, while I focused on business and accounting. Despite his mother's objections, he later joined the family business. As my investment firm prospered, I started handling their investments, which brought a sense of respectability to their financial endeavors. In return, I made a significant amount of money. George had always mentioned that he owed me a favor, and I eventually called in that favor when I learned about your professional tennis player. George assured me he could handle it, and soon, that player was no longer a concern. I became concerned when she appeared ill, so I fetched a bowl from the kitchen. Similar situations arose with your second and third lovers. Once you got involved with them, I made sure that Mike and Emma had a mother. If you hadn't considered leaving me, they would still be alive. She inquired with tears streaming down her face if it was my fault they were gone. I explained that I believed Tom was also deceased. However, I genuinely felt relief that she was leaving me for Tom. The kids were now in college and didn't need her. Tom was alive and waiting for her to join him. The look of relief on her face was quite something. Did she really think I'd confess to being rude to 3 men and let her off the hook? She asked why I hadn't simply let her go with Tom. I clarified that before she left, I wanted revenge. I reminded her of our little dog Fifi and how I always cared for her. The meat labeled for dogs only in the freezer came from her previous partners after their demise. So every time I saw Fifi do her business, it reminded me that her partners were nothing more than garbage. But that wasn't all. Glute and thigh muscles made great steaks, and she had even commented on how tasty they were when I grilled them. I asked her to think about the last time she had them. This time she actually threw up, but she missed the bowl on her dressing. I continued, telling her that now she knew. I pressed speed dial on my disposable phone, and 2 burly men entered through the front door. I informed her that these gentlemen would ensure her rendezvous with Tom, and she could spend the rest of her life with him, knowing she was accountable for the souls of her former lovers. I bid farewell to Peggy and expressed my hope that she would face the consequences. One of the 2 men grabbed Peggy's suitcases, while the other escorted her to the waiting car. She didn't utter another word, as promised. They spent the rest of their lives together, driving in Tom's car for precisely as long as it took to reach the bottom of the old quarry, 10 miles out of town. Now, they're all together in the same place, 1 cheating partner and 4 wife-stealing individuals. I love my life, and I have the proof that my beloved wife Peggy left me for another man.
On that significant day in August 2005, my friend, an 18-year-old high school graduate, burst into the door of our cozy 2-room apartment, and I couldn't believe my incredible luck. Her lifelong dream of becoming an actress had always seemed quite achievable to me, given her undeniable beauty and exceptional talent. This was unsurprising, considering her vibrant cheerleading background and active involvement in various school drama productions throughout her school years. With her whole future ahead of her, the acting profession appeared to be a reachable reality. While my girlfriend had always been resolute about pursuing a career as an actress, I was still contemplating the direction of my own life. I wasn't particularly interested in college and was content working at McDonald's, allowing my girlfriend to take the lead. However, that day marked a turning point. Filled with excitement, she shared the news that she had secured a minor role in a highly acclaimed blockbuster film. It was an incredible development. Though she only had 2 lines to deliver, it felt like a monumental step toward fulfilling her dream. She explained that the lead role in this fantastic opportunity was being played by a regular customer from Hooters restaurant. After promising her a role, and even booking a ticket to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I unquestionably believed in the opportunity that had arisen. Despite my naivety, I refrained from asking how she had managed to land such an incredible chance. In the evening, we gathered with friends to celebrate this momentous occasion. Each moment brought us closer to the allure and grandeur of Hollywood. Eager to have me accompany her on this journey, she reached out to a mysterious sponsor who generously purchased a ticket for me as well. Her happiness was infectious, and I had never seen her so elated before. Upon arriving in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we were met with opulence. Checking into a luxurious hotel for 4 days was a thrilling experience. While my girlfriend was occupied with her scenes for 2 of those days, I didn't mind. I made the most of the opportunity, soaking up the atmosphere of stunning beaches and basking in the warm sun. The remaining days felt like an uninterrupted vacation, filled with beach excursions, lively parties, and even encounters with celebrities involved in the film production. It was like a dream come true. All of this served as motivation that fueled our desire for the glamorous lifestyle that the film industry offered. Upon returning to Pennsylvania, we couldn't shake off the allure of that world. We knew that our path led to Los Angeles, where my friend could wholeheartedly pursue her dreams in the film industry. Her time in St. Vincent and the Grenadines had allowed her to forge valuable connections with influential individuals. Furthermore, she firmly believed that upon our return to Pennsylvania, we should use the $15,300 she earned to embark on this incredible journey. Using a portion of her earnings from the film, we managed to secure a modest apartment in Los Angeles, brimming with hope and anticipation. We were stepping into a new chapter of our lives. Days turned into months, and my girlfriend faced the challenging task of securing significant film roles in this bustling city. Every morning, she woke up early and attended auditions in the hope of achieving a long-awaited breakthrough. Unfortunately, she mainly came across minor roles in local business advertisements that offered meager compensation, falling short of our expectations. As her earnings from the movie role began to dwindle, we found ourselves needing to invest in new clothing and photographs for auditions. Recognizing the need to support ourselves, I decided to take a job at a fast food restaurant. It may not have been glamorous, but it provided us with the opportunity to start earning money and sustain our livelihood. As our savings dwindled, I witnessed her hopes and dreams gradually fade in her eyes. Every evening we returned home burdened by the weight of rejections and disappointments, as she came face to face with the harsh realities and fierce competition of the film industry in Los Angeles. In our small Pennsylvania town, she had been considered the epitome of beauty. But in this sprawling city, beauty was commonplace. Months turned into nearly a year, and she still couldn't secure a substantial role for herself. The clothing she bought was now secondhand, and prospects for advancement seemed uncertain. Eventually, she took a job as a shopping mall model, a significant departure from our lofty aspirations. Nevertheless, it allowed, albeit with difficulty, for the bills to be paid. During this period, I found my own path in life as a fitness trainer. Balancing 2 jobs, one at a restaurant and the other training numerous clients, I aimed to provide stability and support. Our lives were consumed by individual pursuits, and as a result, we seldom found time for each other. Our dreams of success in the entertainment industry appeared to be slipping away, overshadowed by the demands of our busy lives. With each passing day, our dreams seemed to grow more distant. The unforgiving nature of the film and entertainment industry began to wear down my girlfriend's spirit, and I could only helplessly watch as she confronted the harsh reality that achieving success in Hollywood was far from the easy dream we had once envisioned. As time passed, her excessive spending drained our finances completely, and we began to struggle to make ends meet. I became increasingly frustrated with her for depleting our savings at an alarming rate. Finally, we managed to replenish our depleted savings. It happened unexpectedly when I was rummaging through her purse searching for something and stumbled upon a bundle of $1,500. Intrigued, I couldn't help but inquire about where she had obtained such a large sum of money. She appeared flustered, but explained that a photographer she met at the mall had invited her to take pictures at his lavish mansion. I couldn't resist asking why she hadn't mentioned it earlier, to which she replied that she had intended to, but somehow forgot. Curiosity got the better of me, and I continued my questioning, wanting to ensure the legitimacy of her earnings. She assured me that everything was fine. However, as she spoke of her best photos and posing in various outfits for professional photographers, doubt began to creep into my mind. Despite our naive understanding of the industry, I couldn't ignore suspicions about the potential for exploitation or ulterior motives. After all, we had heard stories of people in Hollywood willing to pay exorbitant sums for almost anything. I grew curious and asked her to show me the photos. To my surprise, she mentioned that producers rarely provided copies, and it would take some time before anything would be known about the photo shoots. In my naivety, I accepted her explanation without delving deeper into the matter. This situation persisted for the next 2 years. She frequently returned home late at night, attributing it to earning money by frequenting clubs and occupying VIP seats. She often claimed that her involvement in these projects was limited to gatherings in the VIP section. In other instances, she explained that some producers preferred conducting auditions and shooting scenes during the nighttime. However, as her nocturnal escapades became more frequent, a sense of unease settled within me. Worries about her safety and the company she kept began to overwhelm me. She tried to allay my concerns, arguing that she wasn't the only one engaging in such activities and that many of her friends were compensated similarly. But suspicions persisted in my mind, causing me to question the reality of her actions. Over time, I began to take notice of the company she was keeping, which primarily consisted of individuals typically associated with the adult film industry. Yet, in my naivety, I believed they were simply models. She defended herself by explaining that she had no control over her work schedule, as producers dictated her whereabouts and responsibilities. I tried to logically assess the situation, convincing myself that some producers might genuinely prefer nighttime shoots. All of this seemed to align logically with my limited understanding of the industry. One day, while taking a smoke break near our apartment, a pivotal moment occurred that shattered my illusions. A man in a large SUV pulled up and dropped her off right in front of our house. In that moment, my views on her nocturnal adventures were called into question, leaving me stunned. Shocked by what I witnessed, I couldn't muster the courage to immediately confront her. Instead, I went inside the house and discreetly observed her through the blinds as she entered. Anxiety gripped me at that moment. With a determined decision to uncover the truth about her activities, I secretly planned to follow her the next Friday when she went out. On that Friday, she went on a date with her friends, and I quietly began trailing her. In the end, she ended up at a club with a long line outside. To my surprise, the club's promoter granted my girlfriend and her friends special privileges, allowing them to bypass the long queue and enter the establishment swiftly. In my quest for answers, I reluctantly had to bribe a bouncer generously to gain entry. Inside the club, I carefully scanned the crowd, desperately searching for her. Finally, I spotted her in the VIP section, chatting animatedly and enjoying drinks with her friends. It seemed to match her earlier explanation, and I lingered there for a while. As I began to grow tired and prepare to leave, doubts about the man in the SUV still nagged at me. But those doubts quickly vanished when I realized it was just an Uber Black, and I felt foolish for suspecting betrayal. After scolding myself for being paranoid, I convinced myself that everything was fine and returned to my normal routine. At the time, I worked as a fitness trainer and also dabbled in multi-level marketing, selling dietary supplements and insurance. Thankfully, my average earnings covered rent and my living expenses. When I took charge of managing my own finances, I couldn't help but notice changes in my girlfriend's behavior and appearance. She became more secretive about her financial matters, which raised concerns for me. Occasionally, she displayed aggression toward me, only to apologize later, claiming it was unintentional. Furthermore, she started concealing her finances and paid less attention to her spending, leaving me questioning her financial habits. Despite initially trying to brush these concerns aside, I couldn't ignore the significant decline in her financial stability. She began losing a considerable amount of weight, hardly ate, showed signs of excessive nervousness, and experienced sleep problems. She often slept for extended periods, causing me to worry about her well-being. In my attempt to address her health issues, I made sure she ate properly, attributing her behavior to stress. However, one night as I woke up, I noticed she wasn't in our bed. Baffled, I followed the noise coming from the bathroom, driven by anxiety. To my horror, I discovered my girlfriend using a prohibited substance in the bathroom. I stumbled upon a stash of illegal substances which caught her by surprise. In a panic, she attempted to hide everything but ended up spilling it on the floor. Her desperate actions to salvage the substances resembled a beggar clutching at scattered money. It marked a turning point in our relationship. Overwhelmed by emotions, both of us broke down in tears. She sincerely apologized and pledged to seek help and undergo rehabilitation immediately. It felt as though she had journeyed to Los Angeles, but lost not only herself, but also our connection along the way. Unflinchingly addressing her issues, she bravely kept her promise and checked into a rehabilitation center the very next day. Throughout her month-long stay at the clinic, she displayed genuine remorse and determination, clinging to the hope of overcoming this dark phase and resurrecting her dream. When she completed her rehabilitation program and returned home, She appeared revitalized and filled with newfound strength and resolve. A wave of relief washed over me. Her return was particularly significant as my birthday approached. We had a tradition of going all out for each other's birthdays, always striving to outdo ourselves and create unforgettable celebrations. One day she came home, casually tossing her purse next to me, and went to the bathroom. Curiosity got the better of me, and a few days before my birthday, I decided to search her bag. To my astonishment, I stumbled upon a CD labeled Pilot, and excitement and anticipation surged through me. Without hesitation, I popped it into the DVD player, eager to discover its contents, anticipating it might be a surprise related to me, or perhaps footage of a screen test she attended. I was utterly shocked and filled with anger as the unexpected truth unfolded on the screen. The video showed my girlfriend engaging in intimate activities with another man. It was an image I could hardly fathom. Overwhelmed by emotions, I stormed into the bathroom where she was showering, venting my anger and demanding an immediate explanation for her involvement in such actions. As she emerged from the shower, I noticed she was trembling, and she offered heartfelt apologies. She admitted that what I witnessed was initially meant as a one-time encounter, but had spiraled out of control. I could scarcely comprehend her words. Confused and in search of clarity, I asked her how long she had been involved in this industry. Reluctantly, she confessed that it had been ongoing for over a year. My confusion deepened when she struggled to provide an exact count of how many times she had participated in such activities. Citing the frequency blurred the boundaries and made it hard to keep track. What struck me even more was that the dates and timestamps on the videos coincided with the period when I believed she was in a rehabilitation center seeking help, not pursuing adult films for financial gain. Determined to rebuild my life, I cut off all contact with my ex-girlfriend and focused on my career as a fitness trainer and my involvement in multi-level marketing. Unfortunately, the latter turned out to be a pyramid scheme that was eventually shut down by authorities, dashing my hopes. Undeterred, I decided to invest my savings in opening a gym. However, the high expenses in California posed a significant challenge. Opting to join the Planet Fitness franchise, I seized the opportunity to open a small gym in my Pennsylvania hometown before leaving California. Wanting to be transparent, I reached out to my ex-girlfriend to inform her of my departure. Despite our breakup 6 months earlier, our connection remained strong, and our phone conversation stirred up emotions in both of us. She spoke of feeling abandoned, emphasizing that I had brought her to California and then abandoned her when she needed me most. Her words left me speechless, and I found myself immersed in memories of our shared youth and the dreams we once held together. Having made the decision to return to my hometown, I took the initiative to establish the Planet Fitness Center. As the business began to thrive, I also found solace in close relationships that brought joy and fulfillment back into my life. However, over time I heard unsettling rumors that my ex-girlfriend had turned to a life of street-based solicitation to support her illegal substance use. Initially skeptical, I decided to investigate and discover the truth firsthand. What I uncovered left me utterly shocked. The person I once knew had become a mere shell, devoid of the vibrant soul I had cherished. About 2 years after the opening of my gym, the situation took an unexpected turn. Everything had been going smoothly for me. The membership at my gym kept growing and it seemed like life was on a positive trajectory. But then, an unexpected and devastating piece of news reached me. My ex-girlfriend had passed away while with a client, having consumed an excessive amount of a prohibited substance. The moment I received this heart-wrenching information, chills ran down my spine, and I rushed home. Unable to contain my emotions, I sat on the shower floor, overcome by uncontrollable grief and tears. To this day, I still carry guilt and never cease to wonder if I could have done something differently. Despite reassurances from my therapist, pain and regret continue to weigh heavily on my heart.
Welcome back to Cheating Tales Lab. We're so glad you're here. We've got an incredible story lined up for you today, and we hope it keeps you on the edge of your seat. Let's jump right into the story. Preston Fowler's fingers drummed an impatient rhythm on the steering wheel as he navigated through the congested streets of downtown. At 45, The architect had built a reputation for innovative, sustainable designs, but today his mind was consumed by the eco-friendly skyscraper project that was eating up his time and sanity in equal measure. As he pulled into the driveway of his suburban home, the tension in his shoulders eased slightly. The front door swung open before he could reach for his keys. Jessica, his wife of 20 years, practically bounced out to greet him, her enthusiasm seeming oddly out of place. "Preston, darling, you're home early," she chirped, her eyes gleaming with an intensity that made him pause. He glanced at his watch. "It's past 8, Jess." "Oh, is it?" She laughed, the sound a touch too high. "I guess I lost track of time. How was your day?" Preston raised an eyebrow, curiosity momentarily overriding his exhaustion. "Same as always. Meetings, revisions, more meetings." "You seem chipper." Jessica's smile widened. "I have a surprise for you," she said, practically vibrating with excitement. "A surprise?" Preston echoed, his fatigue-addled brain struggling to keep up. "Meet me at the Regal Hotel tomorrow at 7 p.m. Don't be late." The enthusiasm in her voice felt off, like a discordant note in a familiar melody. But Preston, his mind still half occupied with work concerns, simply nodded. "All right," he said, stepping past her into the house. "I'll be there. Now, if you don't mind, I need a shower." As the hot water pounded against his back, Preston's thoughts drifted. Their marriage had been distant lately, true. The passion that once burned between them had cooled to embers. But he'd been working hard, building a future for them both. Surely Jessica understood that? He stepped out of the shower, wrapping a towel around his waist. Jessica was nowhere to be seen. Probably already asleep, he thought. Or pretending to be. He sighed, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. The next evening, Preston arrived at the Regal Hotel precisely at 7 p.m., a bouquet of roses in hand. The concierge, a young man with a polite smile, directed him to a suite on the top floor. "Enjoy your evening, sir," the concierge said, a hint of knowing in his voice that made Preston's skin prickle. As the elevator ascended, a mix of anticipation and unease settled in his stomach. What was Jessica playing at? Was this her way of rekindling their romance? He knocked on the suite door, straightening his tie with his free hand. The door swung open to reveal Jessica, but she wasn't alone. A man Preston had never seen before stood behind her, a smug grin plastered across his face. "Hello, Preston," Jessica said, her voice devoid of warmth. "You're right on time. Always so dependable." Preston's eyes darted between Jessica and the stranger. "What's going on here, Jess?" Jessica's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Meet Antonio, my high school sweetheart." "Your surprise is this. I'm leaving you." Preston stood frozen, his mind refusing to process the words. Antonio sauntered forward, draping his arm around Jessica's waist. "Thanks for keeping her warm for me, chump," Antonio sneered, his eyes gleaming with malicious glee. Jessica's eyes, once warm and loving, now held only cold contempt. She tossed an envelope at Preston's feet. "Divorce papers. I've already transferred your retirement funds to my account." She paused, savoring the shock on Preston's face. "Oh, and here's a one-way ticket to Alaska. Why don't you go cool off?" The roses slipped from Preston's grasp, scattering across the plush hotel carpet. He stared at the fallen flowers, his mind reeling. "You can't be serious," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Antonio laughed, the sound grating on Preston's nerves. "Oh, she's dead serious, buddy. You snooze, you lose." Preston's shock began to give way to anger. He took a step forward, his fists clenching at his sides. "You think you can just throw away 20 years of marriage? For this high school fling?" Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Watch it, Preston. Don't make a scene. It's over. Accept it and move on." "Move on?" Preston's voice rose. "You've stolen my money, my future, and you expect me to just move on?" Antonio stepped between them, his chest puffed out. "You heard the lady. It's over. Now why don't you take that ticket and disappear, before things get unpleasant?" Preston's eyes locked with Jessica's. For a moment, He searched for any sign of the woman he'd loved for 2 decades. He found nothing but cold indifference. "You'll regret this," he said, his voice low and steady. "Both of you." He turned on his heel and walked out, leaving the roses scattered on the floor behind him. Days blurred together as Preston grappled with the betrayal. He found himself sitting in his lawyer's office, the tasteful decor a stark contrast to the chaos in his mind. Cameron Schneider, a sharp-eyed attorney with a reputation for ruthlessness in divorce cases, reviewed the situation. "Preston, I've got good news and bad news," Cameron said, leaning back in his leather chair. "The good news is, the transfer of your retirement funds was illegal. We can sue for fraud." Preston leaned forward, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "And the bad news?" Cameron's expression turned grim. "Jessica's filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. She's moving fast, trying to get ahead of us." Preston's jaw clenched, his eyes hardening. "She's the one with differences, like preferring her high school fling to her husband of 2 decades. "I understand you're angry, Preston," Cameron said, his tone measured. "But we need to approach this strategically. Emotion won't win this battle." Preston nodded, forcing himself to take a deep breath. "You're right. What's our next move?" Cameron pulled out a file, spreading documents across his desk. "We counterfile, citing adultery. It won't stop the divorce, but it could affect the division of assets." "Do it," Preston said without hesitation. Cameron nodded, then hesitated. "There's more. Jessica's visa is tied to your marriage. If we report the fraud, it'll be canceled." A glimmer of resolve sparked in Preston's eyes. He leaned forward, his voice low and determined. "Do it. And Cameron? I want everything we can legally throw at them." Cameron's lips curled into a predatory smile. "Consider it done. We'll hit them so hard they won't know what hit them." As Preston stood to leave, Cameron called out, "Preston, one more thing. Don't contact Jessica or that Antonio character. Let them think you're licking your wounds. The element of surprise will be our best weapon." Preston nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Don't worry, Cameron. I've got no interest in talking to either of them, but they'll hear from me soon enough." Preston threw himself into his work, channeling his pain and anger into the skyscraper project. His colleagues noticed the change, the increased intensity in his eyes, the longer hours he put in, but no one dared to mention it. Late one evening, as he was leaving the office, a conversation between 2 junior architects caught his attention. "Did you hear about that international competition?" one of them asked, excitement evident in his voice. "Yeah, the Sustainable City Project, right?" the other replied. "The prize is huge." Preston slowed his pace, listening intently. "But there's a catch," the first one continued. "You need to work with a partner from a developing country." "Seriously? That's going to make things complicated." Preston paused, an idea forming. He turned back, startling the 2 younger men. "Tell me more about this competition," he said, his tone brooking no argument. 20 minutes later, Preston was back at his desk, furiously researching. Hours ticked by as he scoured the internet, looking for the perfect partner. As dawn broke, casting long shadows across his office, he stumbled upon a promising lead. A talented but unknown architect in Jessica's home country. A smile spread across Preston's face. 2 birds, 1 stone, he muttered, reaching for his phone to make travel arrangements. As he booked his flight, Preston's mind raced with possibilities. This wasn't just about winning a competition anymore. It was about rebuilding his life and exacting justice. Jessica and Antonio had tried to break him, but they'd only succeeded in unleashing a side of him they never knew existed. He pulled up Jessica's social media profiles, noting with disgust the lovey-dovey photos she'd already posted with Antonio. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he muttered, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, he considered leaving a scathing comment. But no, that would tip his hand. Instead, he closed the browser and pulled up his email. He had work to do, plans to make. Jessica and Antonio thought they'd won, that they'd left him broken and defeated. They couldn't be more wrong. Preston Fowler, the mild-mannered architect, was gone. In his place stood a man determined to not just survive, but to thrive, and to make those who betrayed him pay dearly for their mistakes. As the first rays of sunlight crept through his office window, Preston allowed himself a moment of reflection. The pain of betrayal still burned, but it was fuel now, driving him forward. He'd trusted too easily, loved too blindly. Never again. He picked up the phone, dialing Cameron's number. It was early, but he knew his lawyer would be up. "Cameron? It's Preston. I need you to do something for me." The stale air of the airplane cabin did little to clear Preston's head as he touched down in Jessica's home country. The 14-hour flight had given him ample time to stew in his anger, to plot his next moves. As he stepped off the plane, he straightened his tie and set his jaw. This wasn't just a business trip. This was war. Preston's contact, a local architect named Maureen, was waiting for him at the arrival's gate. She was younger than he expected, probably in her early 30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Mr. Fowler?" she asked, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. Preston nodded, shaking her hand. "Call me Preston." "Thank you for meeting me on such short notice, Maureen." They made their way to a nearby cafe, the bustle of the airport fading into background noise. As they sat down with their coffees, Maureen got straight to the point. "Your email was intriguing," she said, her eyes studying Preston's face. "But I have to ask, why me? You're already successful. You could partner with anyone for this competition." Preston took a sip of his coffee, buying himself a moment to choose his words carefully. He'd prepared for this question, knew he needed to strike the right balance between honesty and strategy. "Your designs are revolutionary," he said, meeting her gaze. "I've been following your work for a while now. The way you integrate local materials and traditional techniques into modern, sustainable structures. It's exactly what this competition is looking for." Maureen's eyebrow arched skeptically. "Flattery will get you nowhere, Mr. Fowler. What's the real reason?" Preston's lips twitched in a hint of a smile. He appreciated her directness. "All right, cards on the table. I'm going through a personal upheaval. My wife left me, tried to clean out my accounts. I need this win, both professionally and personally. And I believe that together, we could not only win this competition but change the face of sustainable architecture." He watched as Maureen processed this information, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "And what do I get out of this, besides a chance at a prize that's not guaranteed?" "Exposure," Preston said without hesitation. "Win or lose, you'll be working with one of the top firms in sustainable design. It's a foot in the door of an industry that, let's face it, isn't always welcoming to women, especially in this part of the world." Maureen's eyes narrowed, but Preston could see the spark of interest there. "You've done your homework," she said. Preston nodded. "I believe in being prepared. So, what do you say? Partners?" Maureen was silent for a long moment, her fingers tapping a rhythmless beat on the table. Finally, she extended her hand. "Partners," she said. "But I warn you, Mr. Fowler, I don't tolerate being used or manipulated. If I sense any funny business, I'm out. Understood?" Preston shook her hand, a genuine smile crossing his face for the first time in weeks. "Understood. And please, it's Preston. We're partners now, after all." As they left the cafe, diving into the humid air of the city, Preston felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The first piece of his plan was in place. Jessica and Antonio might think they'd broken him, but they had no idea what was coming. Across the ocean, Jessica and Antonio were living it up, oblivious to the storm brewing. They moved into a penthouse apartment, paid for with Preston's stolen retirement funds. Jessica lounged by the rooftop pool, sipping champagne as Antonio massaged her shoulders. "You know," Antonio said, his hands working out a knot in Jessica's neck, "I could get used to this life." Jessica laughed, the sound echoing across the empty rooftop. "Well, get used to it, baby. We've got plenty to spare." Antonio's hands paused. "About that, how long do you think it'll take before the money transfer gets noticed?" Jessica waved her hand dismissively. "Please. Preston's probably crying into his blueprints right now. By the time he figures it out, if he ever does, we'll be long gone." She turned, pulling Antonio in for a kiss. "Now stop worrying and pour me another glass. We've got a lot of lost time to make up for." As they clinked their glasses together, neither of them noticed the dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The storm was coming, whether they were ready or not. Preston hunched over the drafting table, his pen flying across the paper. Across from him, Maureen was deep in concentration, her computer screen flickering with complex 3D models. They'd been working nonstop for weeks, their design for a self-sustaining city taking shape before their eyes. What if we integrated vertical farming here? Maureen suggested, pointing to a section of the model. It would increase food production and add a unique aesthetic element. Preston nodded, quickly sketching the idea. Brilliant. And if we use native plants, it'll tie into the local ecosystem. Their partnership had flourished beyond Preston's wildest expectations. Maureen's innovative ideas perfectly complemented his technical expertise. As their design gained traction in the competition, Preston felt a surge of satisfaction. This was more than just a professional triumph. It was the first step in his plan for revenge. But even as he threw himself into the project, Preston hadn't forgotten about Jessica. In his spare moments, he'd been discreetly gathering information about her past in her home country. Every scrap of intel was carefully filed away, ammunition for the battle to come. His phone buzzed, Cameron's name flashing on the screen. Preston excused himself, stepping out onto the balcony of their rented workspace. Cameron, what's the news? His lawyer's voice crackled over the line. The fraud case is solid, Preston. We've got her dead to rights on the retirement fund transfer. But there's more. We're pushing for an annulment based on Jessica's infidelity. Preston's grip tightened on the phone. Excellent. What's the catch? I hear a but coming. Cameron sighed. But there's a complication. She's trying to claim half your business assets. Says she supported you while you built the company, so she's entitled to a share. Preston's eyes narrowed, his free hand clenching into a fist. Not for long, she's not. What are you planning, Preston? Cameron asked, a note of concern in his voice. Don't worry about it, Preston said. Just keep the legal pressure on. I'll handle the rest. He ended the call, his mind already racing. Jessica thought she could take half his company? She had another thing coming. Over the next few days, Preston initiated a series of careful maneuvers. He restructured his company, moving assets into protected trusts and offshore accounts. It was all perfectly legal, if a bit ethically gray. But Preston was past caring about ethics. This was about survival. As he worked, he kept one eye on the competition. Their design was gaining attention, industry insiders whispering about the dark horse team that was shaking things up. Preston allowed himself a smile. Let Jessica and Antonio think they'd won. The game was just beginning. Jessica frowned at the bank statement, her manicured nail tapping against the screen of her tablet. Antonio, she called, her voice sharp. Come look at this. Antonio sauntered in from the bedroom, still buttoning up his silk shirt. What is it, babe? The money, Jessica said, thrusting the tablet at him. It's not all there. Antonio's brow furrowed as he looked at the numbers. What do you mean? Did you spend more than you thought? Jessica shot him a glare. Don't be stupid. I know exactly how much I've spent. This is something else. She paced the room, her mind racing. It's Preston. It has to be. That sneaky bastard is up to something. Antonio flopped onto the couch, looking unconcerned. So what? We still have plenty. And by the time he figures out how to get it back, we'll be long gone. Jessica whirled on him, her eyes flashing. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the money. It's about winning. And I refuse to let that pathetic excuse for a man beat me. She grabbed her phone, furiously tapping out a message. We need to hit back. Hard. What are you thinking? Antonio asked, a hint of nervousness creeping into his voice. Jessica's lips curved into a cruel smile. Preston's always been so proud of his precious skyscraper project. What if something were to go wrong? Over the next few days, Jessica and Antonio launched their counterattack. They spread rumors about structural instabilities in Preston's eco-friendly skyscraper, whispering to investors and city officials about potential safety hazards. But Preston was one step ahead. He'd anticipated their move, had been preparing for it since the moment Jessica betrayed him. Every stage of the project had been meticulously documented, every safety measure triple-checked and verified by independent experts. When the rumors reached fever pitch, Preston calmly presented his evidence. Blueprints, safety reports, material analyses, all laid out in a press conference that left no room for doubt. The attempted sabotage backfired spectacularly, damaging Jessica and Antonio's credibility instead. As Preston wrapped up the press conference, fielding questions from reporters with ease, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Maureen. Saw the news. Nicely done. But we've got work to do. Competition deadlines coming up. Preston allowed himself a small smile as he texted back. On my way. Let's show them what real innovation looks like. Across town, Jessica threw her phone against the wall, watching with satisfaction as it shattered. That bastard, she seethed. How does he always stay one step ahead? Antonio, lounging on the couch, barely looked up from his magazine. Maybe it's time to cut our losses, babe. We've still got enough. Enough? Jessica interrupted, her voice rising to a shriek. It's not about enough. It's about winning. And I refuse to let Preston win. She stormed over to the liquor cabinet, pouring herself a generous glass of scotch. As she drank, her mind raced. The money was dwindling faster than she'd anticipated. Preston was outmaneuvering her at every turn. She needed to act fast. We need to speed up the divorce proceedings, she said, more to herself than to Antonio. Secure what assets we can before Preston can protect them all. Antonio finally looked up, a hint of concern in his eyes. Jess, maybe we should. Shut up, Jessica snapped. I'm not asking for your opinion. Just do as I say. Got it? As Antonio nodded meekly, Jessica turned to stare out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Preston was plotting his next move. But she'd be damned if she'd let him win. This war was far from over. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Architects, investors, and media from around the world had gathered for the final presentations of the International Sustainable City Design Competition. Preston stood backstage, his heart pounding. Months of work, sleepless nights, and relentless planning had led to this moment. Maureen approached, her face a mask of calm determination. Ready? Preston nodded, straightening his tie. Born ready. As they waited for their turn, Preston's eyes scanned the audience. His breath caught in his throat as he spotted two familiar faces. Jessica and Antonio sat near the back, whispering to each other and smirking. They'd come to gloat, no doubt expecting him to fail. Looks like we have some unexpected guests, Maureen muttered, following Preston's gaze. Preston's jaw clenched. Good. Let them watch. Next up, presenting their design for a self-sustaining urban ecosystem, Preston Fowler and Maureen Kigali. The announcer's voice boomed. As they took the stage, Preston locked eyes with Jessica for a brief moment. Her smug smile only fueled his determination. He turned to the judges, his voice steady and confident as he began their presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to see isn't just a city. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that will revolutionize urban living. For the next 30 minutes, Preston and Maureen laid out their vision. They detailed the vertical farms integrated into residential towers, the revolutionary waste management system that turned garbage into energy, and the network of green spaces that served both recreational and environmental purposes. As Maureen explained the cultural aspects of their design, Preston glanced at Jessica and Antonio. Their smiles had faded, replaced by looks of growing unease. The judges peppered them with questions, which Preston and Maureen fielded with ease. Their preparation paid off as they addressed every concern and elaborated on the finer points of their design. As they concluded, the audience erupted into applause. Preston allowed himself a small smile. They'd nailed it. Hours later, after all the presentations were complete, the judges returned to announce the winner. After careful deliberation, the head judge began. We are pleased to announce that the winner of this year's International Sustainable City Design Competition is Preston Fowler and Maureen Kigali. The auditorium exploded with cheers. Preston and Maureen embraced, both of them grinning from ear to ear. As they made their way to the stage to accept their award, Preston caught sight of Jessica and Antonio slinking towards the exit, their faces twisted with anger and disappointment. The next hour was a whirlwind of congratulations, interviews, and handshakes. Preston's phone buzzed constantly with messages from colleagues and potential clients. This win wasn't just a personal triumph, it was a game-changer for his career. As the crowd began to thin, Preston spotted Jessica making her way towards him. Her face was a mask of false cheer, but he could see the calculation in her eyes. "Preston, darling," she called, her voice sickly sweet. "Congratulations on your win. I always knew you had it in you." Preston turned to face her, his expression cold. "Save it, Jessica. We both know you came here hoping to see me fail." Jessica's smile faltered. "Now, that's not fair." "You what?" Preston interrupted. "Thought you'd swoop in and take credit? Try to weasel your way back into my life now that I'm successful again." He leaned in close, his voice low. "Let me make this clear. You're nothing to me now. Nothing but a mistake I'm in the process of erasing." Jessica's face contorted with rage. "You bastard. You think you've won? This isn't over." Preston smiled, a cold, ruthless expression that made Jessica take a step back. "Oh, it's far from over. But trust me, you won't like how it ends." He turned his back on her, rejoining Maureen and a group of investors who were eagerly discussing future projects. As he engaged in the conversation, Preston could feel Jessica's glare boring into his back. But for the first time since her betrayal, he felt nothing but satisfaction. The tables had turned, and Jessica was about to learn just how badly she'd miscalculated. The courthouse loomed before Preston, a monument to justice that would soon become the stage for his final act of retribution. He straightened his tie, his face a mask of calm determination as he climbed the steps. Inside, he found Cameron waiting, a thick briefcase in hand. "Ready for this?" the lawyer asked, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Preston nodded. "More than ready. Let's finish this." They entered the courtroom, the wooden doors creaking ominously behind them. Jessica and Antonio were already there, huddled with their lawyer. Jessica shot Preston a venomous glare as he took his seat, but he ignored her, focusing instead on the task at hand. The judge entered, and the court fell silent. "We're here today in the matter of Fowler versus Fowler," she announced, her voice echoing in the hushed room. "Mr. Schneider, you may present your case." Cameron stood, his presence commanding the room. "Your Honor, what we have here is not just a simple divorce case. This is a story of betrayal, fraud, and malicious intent." Over the next hour, Cameron laid out their case with surgical precision. He presented evidence of Jessica's infidelity, complete with time-stamped photos and hotel receipts. He detailed the illegal transfer of Preston's retirement funds, showing bank statements and tracing the money trail. "But Your Honor," Cameron continued, his voice rising with controlled indignation, "the defendant's actions go beyond mere infidelity and theft. They actively attempted to sabotage my client's professional reputation." He presented affidavits from investors and city officials, revealing Jessica and Antonio's attempts to spread false rumors about Preston's skyscraper project. Email trails and recorded phone calls painted a damning picture of their malicious campaign. As Cameron spoke, Preston watched Jessica's face. Her confident smirk had long since faded, replaced by a look of growing panic. Antonio, for his part, looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Cameron said, producing a final set of documents, "we have evidence of the defendant's past indiscretions in her home country. Actions that, if brought to light, could have serious consequences for her immigration status." Jessica's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. She hadn't expected this, hadn't realized how thoroughly Preston had investigated her past. The judge's face grew increasingly stern as she reviewed the evidence. When Cameron finally concluded, she turned to Jessica's lawyer. "Counselor, do you have anything to add in your client's defense?" Jessica's lawyer, a nervous-looking man who seemed out of his depth, stuttered through a weak rebuttal. His argument sounded hollow in the face of the mountain of evidence Cameron had presented. After a brief recess, the judge returned to deliver her verdict. The courtroom held its breath. In light of the overwhelming evidence presented, the judge began, her voice filled with disgust. "I rule entirely in favor of the plaintiff, Preston Fowler. The marriage is hereby annulled on grounds of fraud and infidelity." All of Mrs. Fowler's claims to Mr. Fowler's assets are dismissed. Preston allowed himself a small smile as the judge continued. Furthermore, Mrs. Fowler is ordered to repay the stolen retirement funds with interest. And given the evidence of her past indiscretions and current illegal activities, I am recommending a full investigation into her immigration status. Jessica's face drained of color. She turned to Antonio, but he was already inching away from her, his eyes darting towards the exit. As the judge's gavel fell, Preston stood, buttoning his jacket. He looked at Jessica, seeing not the woman he had loved for 20 years, but a stranger who had tried to destroy him. "I told you this wasn't over," he said quietly as he passed her. "Enjoy your trip home." Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for a statement. Preston paused on the steps, Cameron at his side. "Mr. Fowler, how do you feel about the verdict?" Preston straightened his tie, his face a mask of professional calm. "Justice has been served," he said simply. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a city to build." As he walked away, leaving the chaos behind him, Preston felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The betrayal that had nearly broken him was now nothing more than a closed chapter in his life. Ahead lay new challenges, new triumphs. And this time, he'd face them on his own terms. Months passed like pages turning in a book, each one filled with victories both personal and professional. Preston stood atop his completed skyscraper, the wind whipping at his suit as he surveyed the city sprawling below. The eco-friendly building was a testament to his vision, a gleaming beacon of sustainable architecture that had already become a landmark. The door to the roof opened, and Maureen stepped out to join him. In the months since their competition win, she had become more than just a partner. She was a friend, a confidant, and a driving force in their newly formed international firm. "Quite a view," Maureen said, coming to stand beside him. "Hard to believe how far we've come in such a short time." Preston nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "It's been quite a journey." Maureen leaned against the railing, her eyes sparkling with barely contained excitement. "I've got some news," she said. "I heard through the grapevine about Jessica and Antonio." Preston raised an eyebrow, curious despite himself. "Oh, they were last seen arguing at the airport," Maureen said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Apparently, he dumped her when the money ran out. Left her high and dry at the departure gate." Preston absorbed this information, surprised to find that he felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, not even pity. Just nothing. "Karma," he said simply. Maureen studied his face for a moment, then nodded, seemingly satisfied with what she saw. "So," she said, changing the subject, "shall we discuss our next project? I've got some ideas for that renewal contract in Singapore." As they delved into the details of their upcoming work, Preston found his mind wandering. He thought about the man he had been just a year ago. Trusting, naive, blindsided by betrayal. That man was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more cautious, but also more fulfilled. The betrayal had nearly broken him, it was true. But from those broken pieces, he had built something far greater than he had ever imagined. A thriving international firm, a reputation as a pioneer in sustainable architecture, and genuine connections with people who valued him for his skills and his character, not what they could take from him. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Preston allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had not just survived, he had thrived. The city below, with its bustling streets and soaring buildings, seemed to pulse with possibility. And he was ready to shape it, one innovative design at a time. "You know," he said to Maureen, interrupting her mid-sentence about solar panel efficiency, "I think we're going to need a bigger office." Maureen laughed, the sound carried away by the wind. "Dreaming big again, are we?" Preston smiled, a genuine, warm expression that reached his eyes. "Always," he said. "After all, why stop now?" As they turned to head back inside, Preston cast one last look at the city skyline. The past was behind him, a closed book. Ahead lay endless possibilities, a future limited only by his imagination and will. And for the first time in a long time, Preston Fowler was excited to see what tomorrow would bring.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
Welcome to my channel. Support our channel by subscribing. Your subscription helps us grow and create more intriguing content like this. Now, let's dive into today's story. Title: Caught in the Act. The hilarious day my wife took over my guilty pleasure. It was a sunny Saturday morning, the kind of morning where everything feels possible. Birds were chirping outside, sunlight poured through the kitchen window, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Ethan stood in the kitchen, expertly balancing a tray with 2 plates of pancakes topped with strawberries and whipped cream. He had a plan. A breakfast-in-bed surprise for Lila, his wife. With a smug grin, he thought about how impressed she'd be. Lila, his ever-practical wife, often teased him for his romantic gestures, but secretly Ethan knew she loved them. He tiptoed up the stairs, careful not to make the old wooden steps creak. As he approached their bedroom, he heard something strange. It was faint at first, but as he got closer, the sound became clearer. Laughter. High-pitched, overly dramatic laughter, followed by gasps, cheers, and even a groan of frustration. Confused, Ethan paused. Was Lila on a call with one of her friends? He tilted his head, trying to make sense of the noise. And then he heard it. The unmistakable theme song of Ultimate Bake-Off Drama, blaring from their TV. His eyes widened in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Lila had always rolled her eyes at his love for reality TV shows, especially ones as over-the-top as Bake-Off Drama. She'd call them frivolous and predictable, insisting she preferred documentaries or heartfelt indie films. Ethan couldn't believe his ears. Balancing the tray with one hand, he slowly pushed the bedroom door open with the other. What he saw nearly made him drop the tray. There was Lila, sitting cross-legged in bed, still in her cozy flannel pajamas, completely absorbed in the screen. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, and she held a mug of tea in one hand while the other gestured wildly at the TV. "No, no, no, you're over-whipping the cream, it's going to split," she shouted at the screen, as though the contestants could hear her. Ethan's jaw dropped. Not only was Lila watching his favorite guilty pleasure show, but she was fully invested. "Lila!" Ethan exclaimed, stepping into the room. She froze, her eyes darting from the screen to him. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then, with the guiltiest smile he'd ever seen, Lila said, "I can explain." But before she could say another word, they both burst into uncontrollable laughter. Ethan set the breakfast tray down on the bedside table and crossed his arms, his expression mock stern. "So, this is what you do when I'm not around? Secretly binge my favorite guilty pleasure?" he teased. Lila's cheeks flushed, but she couldn't wipe the grin off her face. Okay, you caught me," she admitted, raising her hands in surrender. "But in my defense, it's really addictive." Ethan plopped down on the bed beside her, still shaking his head in disbelief. "Addictive! This is the same show you've been making fun of me for years. You said it was trashy and predictable," he said, feigning outrage. Lila laughed, nudging him playfully. "I'm not proud of it, okay? But once I started watching, I just couldn't stop." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly did you start watching?" Lila's face turned even redder. "Fine," she sighed. "It was a couple of weeks ago. You fell asleep early after your work meeting and I couldn't sleep. I was scrolling through the TV and I saw the first episode. I thought, I'll just watch a few minutes. But then, well, one episode turned into 4. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. 4 episodes? On the first night? Lila nodded sheepishly, and Ethan couldn't help but laugh. "You're unbelievable." Lila shrugged. "It's not my fault. The editing is so dramatic, and the contestants are so chaotic. Did you see that guy who tried to bake a 6-tier cake but used salt instead of sugar? I mean, come on, how could I not keep watching? Ethan's laughter grew louder. Oh, I remember him. He's a legend. The two of them spent the next few minutes recounting their favorite moments from the show, their voices overlapping in excitement. It was the first time Ethan had seen Lila this animated about something so lighthearted, and he found it utterly endearing. Lila leaned back against the pillows, her expression thoughtful. You know, she began, I always thought these kinds of shows were just silly fluff. But now I get why you love them. It's not just about the drama or the baking disasters. It's comforting, like a warm blanket after a long day. Ethan leaned in closer, his curiosity piqued. Comforting? That's not a word I'd expect you to use for a show you called ridiculous baking nonsense. Lila smirked, tossing a pillow at him. Don't rub it in. But seriously, there's something therapeutic about it. Watching these people mess up, then get back up and create these incredible cakes or pastries, it's inspiring in a weird way. Ethan chuckled. See? That's the magic. It's like watching a soap opera, but with more sugar and less heartbreak. He paused, studying her face. But why the sudden change? You've never been the reality TV type. Lila hesitated, biting her lip. Well, I guess I've been feeling kind of stressed lately. Work's been insane, and everything just feels so serious all the time. I needed something to take my mind off it, and your silly little show did the trick. Ethan's expression softened. Lila, you should have told me you were feeling that way. We could have figured something out together. She gave him a small, grateful smile. I know. I guess I didn't want to worry you. But hey, I'm here now, fully converted to the world of baking chaos. Ethan grinned, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You know what this means, right? You're officially a member of the Ultimate Bake-Off Drama Fan Club. No turning back now. Oh no, Lila groaned, covering her face with her hands. What have I done? Ethan laughed, pulling her closer. Don't fight it. Embrace the chaos. For the rest of the day, Ethan and Lila stayed in bed, binge-watching the show together. The curtains stayed drawn, the tray of now cold pancakes sat untouched, and time seemed to melt away. They laughed at the contestants' over-the-top personalities, cheered for their favorites, and groaned at the inevitable baking disasters. Even Charlie, their golden retriever, got in on the action. He curled up at the foot of the bed, occasionally perking up his ears and barking whenever the contestants' arguments grew especially heated. Lila reached down to scratch his head. Even Charlie thinks this show is chaotic, she said with a laugh. At one point, Ethan turned to Lila with a mischievous glint in his eye. You know, we could totally do this. Lila raised an eyebrow. Do what? Join a baking competition. Why not? Ethan said, sitting up straighter. We'd make a great team. I'd handle the creative side, and you could supervise. Lila gasped in mock offense. Supervise? Wow, such faith in my baking skills. Ethan smirked. Hey, someone needs to keep me from accidentally using salt instead of sugar. She laughed, throwing a pillow at him. Fine, but only if I get to wear the chef's hat. Deal, Ethan said, pulling her into a hug. Team Bake Off is officially in business. As the credits rolled on the season finale, Lila let out a dramatic sigh. Well, Ethan, I guess this is our thing now. Ethan laughed, pulling her close. Finally, welcome to the dark side. Just then, Charlie, ever the opportunist, knocked over the remote with his paw, accidentally starting a new season. The opening theme song blared through the room, and Ethan and Lila exchanged a look. For a moment, they both sat there, frozen. Then, as if on cue, they burst into laughter. Well, Lila said, settling back against the pillows, I guess one more episode won't hurt. Or a whole season, Ethan added with a grin. And so their guilty pleasure adventures continued. with Charlie happily wagging his tail at the foot of the bed, ready for whatever baking chaos came next. And that, my friends, is how Lila and I discovered that even guilty pleasures can bring people closer. Let me know in the comments. What's your guilty pleasure, and have you ever caught someone enjoying it too? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more fun, relatable stories. Thanks so much for watching, and I can't wait to chat with you in the next one.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
After a long and exhausting week of sales calls, spanning 3 of the 5 western states in my territory, I finally returned to my small one-bedroom apartment. The pressure to improve my sales numbers was overwhelming, and I had been rushing from client to client, trying to avert a looming catastrophe. It felt good to be home, but the relief was short-lived. A suitcase full of dirty laundry, a week's worth of unopened mail, and a list of tasks that had piled up awaited me. To top it off, I was gearing up for another week on the road, hitting the remaining 2 states in my territory on Monday. It was 8 p.m. on Friday when I walked through the door, drained but relieved to have a brief respite. I had spent the flight home mentally compiling a list of everything I needed to take care of before my next trip, but that was as far as my planning had gone. The first thing I did, though, wasn't tackling the chores. Instead, I made myself a cold drink, coconut-flavored vodka with shaved ice and cranberry juice. As I took the first sip, I let out a sigh of relief. If only all my problems could be solved that easily. I grabbed my cell phone and pressed the button to connect me to my ex's phone. I had programmed the number into my cell during the past week. Kathy and I had met 2 years before. She liked my looks, my restored car, and the fact that I worked and made pretty good money. I liked her looks, especially her fantastic body, and the fact that she wanted to have sex as much as I did. I was 24 years old when we met, and had never felt like I had enough time for more than a little partying and a few very casual relationships before meeting her. She was 22 years old and looking to settle down after 4 years of heavy partying in college. We met at a party thrown by a college fraternity brother one balmy June Saturday night. 2 hours later, we were lying on my king-size bed, trying to catch our breath after a torrid 20-minute sexual romp. We started really going out together after that, had one of those whirlwind courtships, and 2 months later, we ran off and got married in Las Vegas at a really seedy wedding chapel, drunk as hell, and laughing crazily as a fake Elvis sang us the Hawaiian wedding song. The wedding was really the major highlight of the time we spent married and living together. A few months later, we had a huge fight that began over nothing at all really, and it just kept escalating, picking up in intensity, until suddenly she ended up slapping my face and running out of my apartment, back home to stay with her mother. I woke up the next morning, still pissed at her, and later convinced myself that I really didn't miss having her around that much, and I'd be better off without her. After I deliberately made no attempt to contact her for more than a week, she finally ended up calling me. By the end of that conversation, which consisted mostly of her crying and me shouting, I think we both started to realize that whatever hopes we'd had for being with each other were now finished. She ended up asking me to take care of filing for a divorce, and so I went ahead and complied with her wishes. Since there were no kids or jointly owned real estate, and because neither of us had acquired anything new during our short time together, it was agreed that we just go our separate ways. My parents acted much more upset about the whole thing than either Kathy or I. After the divorce was final, we'd had zero contact until this past week. I had been so busy with my work for the past year and a half that I hadn't made any time to socialize since we split up. I kept meaning to make the time, but had to put it off due to all my travel and the pressures of 2 bad sales years in a row. No one had singled me out for any of the blame for the sales slump as of yet, but it didn't take a genius to know that the company couldn't sit back forever and watch their sales volume keep shrinking in my territory. Kathy had called for the past 3 days and left at least 10 voice messages on my phones. Call me urgent. Need to talk with you right away. Benny, I have to see you immediately. Those kind of messages. I don't hear from her for more than a year, and now, all of a sudden, she has to see me? Hello? Damn, she still had the sexiest voice. Hi, Kathy. It's Benny. You needed to talk to me? Benny. Oh God. Thanks for calling. I was afraid, when you didn't call me back, that you didn't get any of my messages. No, I got them, but I was out of state and just got back 5 minutes ago. What's so important? Benny, I need you to do me a huge favor. It's like a matter of life or death for me. I didn't say anything, waiting for her to continue. After a long pause, she did. Benny, after we split up, you knew that I kept the last name Smith? No, I didn't know that, but if my maiden name had been Horsley, I'd have probably done the same thing too. No, I didn't, but it isn't a problem for me. You're welcome to keep it. I still couldn't figure how having my last name would be important to anyone else, or make her so anxious to speak with me. Thanks, it was the only thing I kept from our marriage, and I didn't think you'd mind. The thing is though, Benny, about a year and a half ago I got this job working with the Christian Broadcasting Network as a broadcast editor. I heard her question and assumed it to be rhetorical. I got it because I said I was married, Benny. They don't hire single people usually. It's a family values issue with them or something. Anyway, I love the job, and I'm damn good at it too. In fact, I'm being promoted to be an associate producer. And now, because I'm going to be more easily identified with the network, they insist on meeting my husband. She shut up at that point, and I couldn't seem to outwait her for once. And I don't get the promotion and would probably lose my job if I can't produce my husband. Benny, all I need is for you to show up at a few things over the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow there's a big affiliates convention, and it would be perfect for me to bring you to it and introduce my husband to the bosses. Benny, I know it's asking a lot, but please do this for me. Kathy, you know I'd like to do it for you. But this is really a bad time for you to be asking. I'm just getting in, after a week on the road. I'm only here for 2 days, and then I'm heading back out again early on Monday morning for another week. I'm almost 20% off on meeting my annual quota already, and I'm busting my hump just to try and keep my own job. I've got so many things I need to get done this weekend. I just can't spare the time. Sorry, Kathy. I felt bad, but I really couldn't do it for her. Benny, it would only be for a few hours. The affiliates thing lasts from 6 to 9 or so, and then there's a little dinner afterwards for the network family. You'd be home by 11. I'm only asking for about 6 hours, Benny. If they meet you and they like you, maybe that's all you have to do, and I get my promotion and I'd owe you a big favor for doing it. Kathy, I don't have 6 minutes to spare this weekend, let alone 6 hours. I've got to do so many things that I'll probably miss doing some of them just because there isn't enough time. I only called you back because we have a history together. Your messages are the only calls I'm returning. Sorry, Kathy. I've got to go. Benny, don't hang up. Are you still in that tiny apartment on Delano Street? Yeah, why? I'll come over there right now. I'll help you get things done, so you'll have it all finished in time for Monday. I'll save you more than the time it takes to do what I'm asking. Benny, please, I need this job and I want this promotion. Kathy, I've got to write up my expense account and do my sales summary. You can't help me with that. I've got to balance my checkbook and pay all the charge cards and utilities and things. I've got to get my suits dry cleaned and my other clothes washed and packed for Monday morning. I've got to get Mom and Dad an anniversary present and take it over to them. I've got to get something for Mike and Tammy's wedding, which is next weekend. There's too much to do. I've got to go. Sorry, Kathy. I hope you can work it out some ways for yourself. Bye. I hung up the phone and made another drink. I was sipping at my third drink and working on my expense sheet when I heard an insistent knocking at my door. I got up, thinking it was probably a neighbor, and opened my door to see Kathy. She pushed past me and planted herself firmly in the middle of my living room, arms crossed over her chest, a determined look set on her pretty face. Here's the deal, Benny. I'll stay with you for the whole weekend. I'll make sure everything gets done and you leave Monday with everything done and ready. You give me that time I need and we're even. I won't ask you to help me ever again. We'll help each other. It was the weekend. I was tired and already feeling pretty miserable. I just didn't have enough energy left for arguing with her. I finally just nodded my head in surrender and went back to my chair. I picked up my receipts and my expense notebook and went back to fiddling on my swindle sheet. Kathy quickly disappeared into my bedroom. In a few minutes, she returned with 2 pillowcases full of dirty laundry and 4 of my dirty suits draped over her arm. She opened the apartment door and left. By 10 o'clock, I was worn out. I had most of my sales report finished and my expense sheet was completed, a real work of art. I was dead tired. So I got undressed and went in to lie down on my bed, noticing when I did that Kathy had put on fresh sheets and pillowcases. I was awakened about an hour later by a loud pounding on my door. I got myself up and let Kathy in. She held 3 packages of my laundry in her right hand. It was cleaned and folded, separated neatly into those brown paper wrappings, and tied with strings. My suits were in her left hand, wrapped in those plastic covers, fresh from a dry cleaning place. I took the packages from her and told her I was too tired to tell her any more things to do. I told her I'd see her in the morning, put the laundry in the bedroom on my dresser, and hung up the suits in my closet. As soon as I had done that, I crawled back into my bed and passed out. I woke up at 9 o'clock Saturday morning to the unusual, but very welcome, smell of freshly grilled pancakes coming from my kitchen. The left side of my bed had obviously been slept in, so I didn't have to wonder where Kathy had spent the night. There was another suitcase, one I'd never seen before, lying on the floor next to my bathroom. I wondered when she brought that in. I went in and took a shower and took care of my morning ablutions. I put on some casual clothes and walked out to my breakfast. The pancakes were tasty, the orange juice cold and tart, the coffee was fresh perked and sure didn't taste like the crap I made at home. I tried to think whether Kathy had ever cooked a meal for me while we were married, and I couldn't remember if she had or not. We used to eat out all the time. This is great, Kathy. Thanks a lot. I didn't know you cooked. Glad you like it. What can I do for you now? You said something about some presents? I told her about my parents having an anniversary this coming week and wanting to get them something special. It was their 30th. She asked what my budget range was, and I told her a couple $100 max. I told her where Mike and Tammy had registered for gifts for their wedding next weekend, and off she went, all my ready cash in her purse, seeming very happy to do the gift shopping. After she left, I walked over to my desk to finish up my sales report and summary. On top of the pile of stuff I'd left last night was my checkbook, 7 envelopes addressed and stamped with checks written out and needing only my signature. Underneath that were my last 4 bank statements, all with a written reconciliation on the back. I opened my check register and saw that Kathy had updated everything, including my direct deposited paid checks from the time of my last update some 3 or 4 months previously. I signed the checks and sealed them inside the envelopes. Another chore I'd been putting off and dreading safely accomplished. It took me another hour to finish up my sales report and summary. I decided to also write up a long overdue sales forecast and projection in which I detailed some of the reasons why I thought sales were off in my territory and plans that I had formulated to try to improve my results in the near term. I faxed everything into my home office, hopeful that the coming week's sales orders would compare favorably to those projections I'd now given. I sat back in my chair and took a moment to reflect on how much better I was suddenly feeling. Everything I'd really needed to get done this weekend, other than visiting with my folks, packing my suitcase and suit bag, was already done. I called over to my mom and dad's house and talked with them for a few minutes. I asked them if I could come over sometime on Sunday, just to see them and say hello. They said sure, that they'd be in all day. My dad asked me if everything was okay with me. He has always worried that I worked too hard and didn't make enough effort to enjoy things as much as some of his friends' children seemed to. By the time Kathy got back at 1, I was relaxing in my recliner, having a beer and watching a ball game on the tube. She had 2 large packages, all gift-wrapped, and 2 occasion cards for the wedding and the anniversary. I got your parents a down comforter for their bed and a hand-crocheted tablecloth for their dining room table. For Mike and Tammy, I got a nice set of cookware that was on their gift registry list. It was listed at $349, but I got it on a deep sale discount for just under $200. It's a great starter set, and they can easily add to it because the manufacturer has a full line of cookware products. As you can see, it is all gift-wrapped. All you need is to sign the cards. Kathy, I want to thank you for what you've already done for me. To be honest, I had no idea you were so efficient and capable when we were together. I guess I never really paid much attention to things other than your pretty face and your great body. I'm impressed and, at the same time, a little bit embarrassed that I never gave any thought to you possessing skills and competencies. Thank you, Ben. That might be the nicest compliment I've ever gotten from a guy. So, what's next on your bottomless list? Well, I've finished all the necessary reports for work. I still need to set up a good itinerary for my sales stops next week. I'll do that Sunday night. I already called and set up a visit with my parents for tomorrow in the early afternoon. I guess all I need to do is go with you to your work thing and figure out how to get myself laid before I leave here on Monday morning. Get laid? You actually budgeted time to get laid? How do you usually go about doing that? Well, usually, I go out on Saturday night, find a pretty girl and sweet talk her into coming home with me. Once I get her here, I give her the grand tour and boom, the next thing you know, she's all over me, and in a matter of minutes, I'm getting laid. It's really pretty simple actually, almost foolproof. Only problem is, I promised my ex-wife that I'd use those very hours, prime stalking hours I might add, that I'd need to find a pretty girl, to help her with her problem instead. And now I guess I'll just have to wait another week before taking care of my little problem. I had no idea you had it down to such an exact formula. Does it really work that easily for you? Every time. Really, every time? Yep. So when's the last time you did it? Went out on a Saturday night and found a pretty girl and brought her home. It's been a while. I've really been busy, and I'm on the road way more often than I'm at home. Doesn't it work on the road too? Oh, no. It only works at home. It must be something about the apartment that just gets to them. 5-minute tour and then, lights out, a done deal. Well, don't you bother to get any of their phone numbers? Can't you call one of them tomorrow and set up a little Sunday night tour and reunion? Only works once, Kathy, and only on a Saturday night. I really don't know why, but that's how it works. It's really kind of complex and mystical. It might possibly have something to do with Zen. Benny, you are so full of shit. Are you trying to guilt trip me into going to bed with you, just so I can get you to come to the network affiliate show with me? Kathy, I had hoped that you knew me better than that. If you can remember back to just last night, while I was trying my hardest to get myself some much-needed sleep, you were all pressed up against me, trying to rub your body all over me in the bed, but I was able to resist and just pushed you away from me. I almost couldn't get you to quit trying to do things until I finally threatened to kick you out of bed if you didn't leave me alone. Liar. Liar. Kathy was laughing and pushing me as she spoke. You must lead a rich fantasy life to come up with that story. But really, Benny, how long has it been since you've been late? You can tell me. I won't laugh. Much. Probably longer than it's been for you. You might be surprised, Benny. Maybe even shocked. I turned away from her, having had enough of that particular topic, and went over to the cards she brought with the gifts and took my sweet time filling them out. I've always liked to include a personal message with gift cards, trying to make it seem less mundane and trivializing. I wrote my parents that, in spite of my so far dismal track record, I still had hopes of one day celebrating my 30th anniversary with the right woman. I wished Mike and Tammy a lifetime of feeling the same way about each other as they did right now. By the time I was finished, it was after 3 o'clock, and I told Kathy to get ready to go because I wanted to stop off somewhere and get something to eat before we went to the shindig at her work. That produced a quick flurry of activity on her part, and after only 45 minutes, she was all dolled up and ready to leave. I went in and put on my best and most conservative suit. I still manage at special occasions to clean up pretty well. I'm a little over 6 feet tall and weigh in at about 180, with short dark brown hair and good teeth and clear complexion. I'm not what I'd call handsome, but I'm not homely either. Kathy is better looking than me by several orders of magnitude. She is 5'7" and weighs about 115. She has ash blonde hair that is just past shoulder length and is curly at the ends. She is exceptionally delicate featured in her face, with full, pouty lips and beautiful blue eyes. She has a very deep dimple on her left cheek and has a cute, Nicole Kidman type of nose. Her body is really fine as well. I've always contended that Kathy's but was far and away her most glorious asset. She disagreed, but graciously accepted my right to have a dissenting opinion. We left my apartment at 4 o'clock and drove off in my Lexus, a company car that was already showing the wear of over 40,000 miles. Kathy seemed genuinely disappointed when she learned I had sold my 1970 Dodge Charger. I'd bought it in high school and spent countless hours restoring it to better-than-new condition. The car had a sleek black paint job, and under the hood was a powerful Hemi V8 engine that I had meticulously tuned. I drove that Charger through college and up until last year, when I finally sold it to a collector. The money I got was enough to clear out my remaining student loans. The car had been sitting in my dad's garage most of the time, and I knew it deserved to be driven and appreciated, not left to gather dust. I took Kathy to this little dive that we used to go to a lot when we were together. They served these huge pastrami sandwiches that literally melted in your mouth. $10 for a great pastrami sandwich with 3/4 of a pound of pastrami on it is a pretty good bargain. Dude, why did you pick this place of all places to bring me, Benny? Are you trying to be mean? What? I thought you loved this place. Well, I guess I do, but not just for the sandwiches. The chili fries? A-hole. I don't understand. I really thought you'd like to come here. We used to come here a lot. And what else? I don't know, Kathy. What else? We were sitting right here, in this booth, when you proposed to me. You don't remember? Oh shit, I thought. I'd completely forgotten, but she was absolutely right. How could I forget something like that? She's right. I am an a-hole. Kathy, I'm really sorry. I guess I wasn't thinking when I decided to bring you here. I wasn't deliberately trying to stir up bad feelings for you. I've always thought of this as a happy place for us. I just forgot some of the reasons why it might be considered special to us too. I'm sorry. Did you also forget what day today is, Ben? Nope. It's Saturday, August 13th. And when did we get married? August 14th. But that isn't until tomorrow. So, when did you ask me to marry you? The day before we went to Las Vegas. August 13th. Kathy, I've had a rough week already. I wouldn't remember if it was my own birthday today. Don't read anything sinister into my bringing you here. I remembered that we used to enjoy eating here. I was hungry. Let's finish up here and head over to your affiliates party or show thing. We finished up and drove over to the hotel where the gathering was convening. I was surprised at how Hollywood the presentation ended up being. I even recognized some of the celebrities the network had gathered together for their affiliates bash. They showed about 40 short clips of programs, specials, and old TV series that they would be running over the next year, and talked about advertising revenues, market share, and audience demographics, just as if religious programming was a regular business. Kathy introduced me to about 10 people, holding onto my arm and having the two of us act like your average married couple. One of Kathy's bosses confided in me that the network had big plans in the future for our little Kathy. At about 8:30, the affiliates thing broke up, and Kathy led me over to a banquet room that was assigned for the after-show dinner thing. There was the usual undercooked chicken and overcooked vegetables, and I found myself at a loss for trying to make intelligent conversation about CBN to any of my seating partners. Kathy, though, appeared to be right in her element. She could rattle off jargon right up there with all the other producers and executives. I felt like a housewife brought to her first power luncheon. After the dinner was over, some heavy, rosy-cheeked, older gentleman got up and thanked everyone for their hard work in putting tonight's show together. He made it a point to single out several individuals for their outstanding contributions. I found myself a little resentful when Kathy's name wasn't mentioned, even though I had no idea whether she'd had anything to do with the event planning. By 10:30, it was obvious that everyone would soon be leaving. I was happy when Kathy motioned me over so that the two of us could join the line of departing guests. We were just about to make it safely out the door of that banquet room when the rosy-cheeked big boss headed right at us. "Kathy, just a minute if you will. I really didn't get a chance to meet your husband." I felt the tightness of her grip on my arm, increasing as the man was talking. I stuck out my hand in greeting. "Ben Smith, a pleasure to meet you." What followed was 10 fairly intense minutes of question and answer. Was I okay with the prospect of Kathy's moving up to greater responsibility? How about the many extra hours she'd be working, etc.? Were we making any immediate plans to start a family? Would Kathy's traveling be a problem to me? I answered each question, putting a proud smile on my face and assuring the boss that I was as happy as could be to see Kathy succeeding while doing something she loved. By the time it all ended, Kathy's arm had relaxed again, and the smile on her face might actually have been genuine. We finally excused ourselves, shaking hands all around, and made it out to the valet parking. "Benny, I can't begin to thank you enough for doing this for me. I really appreciate it, and I owe you a big one." "You're very welcome, Kathy. I hope it went well enough that your promotion sails right through. You deserve it, and if those people I spoke with tonight are to be believed, that promotion is deserved and already overdue. I don't think you owe me anything. I think we're about even. I do feel bad about ruining your chances to get laid tonight. I remember how much you always enjoyed doing that. Don't worry about it. Another week isn't going to kill me. You never said how long it's been for you? A month? 6 weeks? I don't really try to keep track of those kind of things. Kathy, let's just say it's been a while and leave it at that." It took us about half an hour to get back to my place, and we were mostly quiet during the ride. After I parked, I told her that she didn't have to come up, that she'd already done more than enough to make up for the time she'd needed my help. She reminded me that her suitcase was up in the apartment, and that she'd made me a deal to help me with things until I left on Monday morning. I smiled and followed behind her into my building. I noticed that she hadn't lost anything in the time we'd been apart. I reminded myself she was a whole person, not just her striking figure. For a moment, I managed to focus on that, until I noticed the subtle sway of her curve as she climbed the stairs. So much for that. So, sue me. Once we got into my apartment, I told Kathy she could stay up if she wanted to, but I was ready to hit the sack. I undressed, hung up my suit, and went in to brush my teeth, floss and rinse, and take a leak before going to bed. I lay on my side of the bed, waiting to see if she was coming to bed, or if she'd wait until she thought I was sleeping. She came in the bedroom within 2 minutes of me getting in bed. I took that as a positive sign. I heard her in the bathroom, and then felt the bed move a little as she crawled in on the other side. I didn't move, not a twitch, although my mind was certainly operating at full speed, processing a lot of improbable scenarios about what might be about to take place. "Good night, Benny. Thanks again for tonight." "Night, Kathy. I'm glad it worked out for you." "Benny, do you think you'd mind too much if I went with you to say hello to your mom and dad tomorrow? I always liked the two of them, and we split up so suddenly that I never had a chance to tell them goodbye. It might be pretty awkward for me, Kathy. They've only recently gotten over being mad at me for letting you get away. I wouldn't want to get them started up again. I could explain to them about how it wasn't your fault. Did you tell them what we were fighting about that night?" "Kathy, I'm pretty tired right now. Maybe we'll talk in the morning? I don't want you taking this the wrong way, but if you let me go with you tomorrow, I'll make sure you get laid all you want tonight. It could be like a better ending for us than the last one. If you want to, I mean." "I really don't think so, Kathy. No offense, but I don't make bargains for sex. How long has it been, Benny?" "It's been a long, long time for me." "Me too, Kathy. A long time. Let's go to sleep now, okay?" Okay, Benny, good night. I'm sorry I hit you. I love you. I felt her hand on my back. I'd never wanted to turn around and hold her as much as I did at that moment, but I resisted it with every ounce of willpower I possessed. I felt her hand pull away from me and could feel the mattress move as she turned her back to me. I lay on my side, cursing my cowardice, wishing I could lay the past to rest. I didn't sleep well at all. Every time I'd drift off to sleep, some new thought would explode in my mind and bring me instantly awake. I got out of bed at 6 o'clock the next morning, feeling like shit, more tired than when I'd first lain down. I went out in the kitchen and warmed up the coffee left over from the day before. Even warmed over, it was superior to what I could brew. I was taking a first sip when Kathy walked out of my bedroom. She saw what I was drinking and went to work brewing a fresh pot. Did you mean it when you said we'd talk this morning, Benny? Jesus, didn't she know when to quit? She had to be able to see that I didn't want to go through any of this with her. Kathy, it's over with us. Nothing has changed that would make any difference. You're sorry you slapped me. I'm sorry for bringing up your past and for making accusations. It shouldn't matter so much to me that you went to see that guy, but it does, and it always will. In my world, married women don't meet old lovers behind their husbands' backs, period. No exceptions. In your world, it's okay as long as they don't jump in bed. I can understand your point of view, Kathy. I just don't happen to share it. I shouldn't have called you those names either, and I'm sorry for doing it. Okay, it's over. Apparently, it only takes one person to end a marriage. Why won't you let it end for us better than it did? If you leave now, Kathy, it's a better ending. You helped me and I helped you. Isn't that better? You don't mean better, you mean happier, right? I don't have a happy ending in me. I wish I did. I wanted one last night, but I couldn't reach out and take it when it was offered, could I? If I could take it back, I would. He meant less than nothing to me. A guy I'd slept with a few times, right before I met you. I agreed to meet him only to tell him how you and I had gotten together so suddenly, how I never had a chance to tell him I'd met somebody important to me because we were always together after we met. It was a courtesy meeting, not some sordid meeting and betrayal with my old lover. It was more like, hello, I found my perfect match. I'm married and deliriously happy. Have a nice life. We're rehashing the same old argument here. I understand what you were telling me. I even believe it. It makes no difference to me that your intent was innocent in meeting with him. You arranged to meet with him, and then you hid that meeting from me. When I was told that there had been a meeting and asked you whether it had taken place, you denied it. I've thought 1,000 times that I shouldn't have brought the subject up when we were having a different argument. It wasn't fair to spring it on you when I did. Unfair or not, you chose to lie to me and deny the meeting had taken place. You claim you panicked. I claim you deliberately deceived me. Well, Benny, it seems like you win again. I have no counter to your argument. You're right. I lied to you, and I deceived you. If you loved me even a tiny fraction of how much I love you, you'd forgive me and give us another chance. Is there anything I can do? Anything at all to get you to forgive me and give me another chance? If there is, just tell me and I'll do it. Anything? She was crying, and so was I. We both knew what my answer would be even before my lips started moving. I hated myself as I said it, but I said it anyway. No, Kathy, there's nothing, sorry. She got up, picked her stuff, and left crying. I got up, closed the door, and made myself a hard one and started the music. The night ended under the circumstances that I might have not thought about, but I was glad it ended. Just to add, we never met again and life just went on. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.